Okay, well, it would take 5 hours and 35 minutes to fly to Boston. It would take 3 days to drive, but it takes 30 days to bicycle all the way. And that is what I call the ride to Jericho. I just want to say a few words about that today and connect it to the spiritual work of being an engaged member of this church, a person who is engaged in the world and of service. The ride to Jericho is, in a sense, a summation of this year for me. And it will be a long journey and an adventure. Now, I've had a bunch of folks ask me a lot of questions about this, so I just want to run down some answers for you. 1, 2, no. So I'm going to stay at this microphone. The answers to these questions are yes, okay? Are you going alone? Does your mother know? Have you done it? Is this a spiritual adventure? Will you have sermon material for years to come? Are you raising money and awareness for something? Is your family supportive? Is your family worried? Will you blog along the route? The answer to all those questions is yes. The answers to these common questions is no. Is your family going with you? Are you camping out? No, if I can help it, but I'm prepared for emergencies. Are you going on big highways? No. Do you have a sag wagon? No. This is a solo journey. The answers to these questions are not sure. Will the church give us updates on where you are? Are you nuts? Is this a midlife crisis? Why? Are you ready? Are you excited? And my favorite, which is not answered by not sure, but answered by the number 2, how many bicycle shorts are you bringing? If you ask my wife, she will tell you that if you know me, you know that my life has been filled with adventures. And that is why I am who I am. And that this journey is one in a long series of adventures and something that I have to do. And beyond that, I have lived with the thought that on occasion we must do extraordinary things. Big or small, extraordinary things. Because life is too short to just be a spectator. So let me connect this to some spiritual meat, and that is where this all comes from, in a sense. There was a man who went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. These words begin Jesus' most famous parable, and they set the stage for what happens in the parable. The road from Jerusalem to Jericho, and the story of the Good Samaritan, which many of you know. Now, know that the road from Jerusalem to Jericho went down from 2,300 feet above sea level to 1,300 feet below sea level near the Dead Sea, which is the lowest point on earth. There is a 3,600-foot drop, so the road from Jerusalem to Jericho is all downhill, which it is not going to be for me. It was also an excellent place for thieves to set up an ambush in those ancient times. With a donkey or on foot, you had to go very slowly down those roads. And so that road was called the Bloody Way due to frequent attacks. And Jesus' parable describes a kind of violence that happens constantly on that road. The parable comes from a question from a lawyer. The lawyer says, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" In Hebrew, Chaye Olam, life in the hereafter, he asks. What must I do to inherit life in the hereafter? And Jesus gives that well-known statement that you must love the Lord with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength and all your mind, and take your neighbor as yourself. Now, you know lawyers. The lawyer asks, well, who is my neighbor? Peter Gomes said lawyers ask questions like this because they either already know the answer and wish to trap you, or wish to flatter themselves by their cleverness. Actually, it's a kind of a pleasure in the questions, which goes along well with our theology. So Jesus tells the story of the Samaritan that we know. A man goes down the Jericho road, the bloody way, and robbers take him and steal his clothes and his food and leave him to dead on the side of the road. The priests go by, many people go by, they don't do anything, and then a Samaritan, a foreigner in the land, comes, bandages the man, brings him to the Holiday Inn, gets him set up, gives the money to the innkeeper, gets him cable TV, whatever it is, feeds them, and leaves. Bandits and thieves. It started me asking, where are bandits and thieves in these days? And I thought, just a side note, wherever ethics is exercised and broken, there is also a lawyer. Now, a Baptist minister lawyer told me this story, that a guy goes into a lawyer's office and asks for advice, and at the end of the session hands him a $100 bill. And when the man leaves, the lawyer looks, and he's actually got $200 bills, although the cost was only $100. And the lawyer says to his friend, now the real ethical question here is, do you tell your partners? The lawyers in the room have heard that 1,000 times. But who are the real bandits? Who should we really be worried about is the question here. In a world of ethics, an ethical world, I think it's those who act in an unethical way, those who know the difference between benefiting from the less fortunate and taking advantage, those who take advantage for personal gain, those who cheat their ways to success. These are the ones we should be concerned about. I digress. Now, I know this parable is odd because I don't intend to be the man in the ditch, okay? I don't intend to be beaten and robbed. Of course, I know, anything can happen. I know that some of you hold that anxiety for me, that will happen. Know that I have people along the way, all along the way. And I have my friend Mark, who's going to ride up the Natchez Trace with me to Nashville, and colleagues and churches, Methodist and Unitarian churches that are going to take me in Kentucky and Ohio and New York. And I have friends coming to ride with me in the last week. It's maybe easy to overthink this. In a way, it's just a journey on a bicycle. Many people do it. There's even a magazine. Here it is, Adventure Cycling. If there's a magazine, it's okay, right? I mean, look, the story's in here about two guys who ride through Nepal. I mean, this is crazy stuff, right? I will be on an established route for a large part of this ride up the Natchez Trace, and then further on, it's called the Underground Railroad route for bicycle travelers. It goes all the way to Ontario from Mobile, Alabama. It is a route that slaves traveled to escape from the South up the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. And I intend to listen to a book about that passage that they made and know that their journey was much harder than mine can ever be. This journey for me is to make the year of engagement and service real. It is to highlight the power of volunteerism. It is to highlight the power that each of us can do something. And I've raised over $20,000 for our project for Jericho Road, where we were going to ask you to put your talents and cross borders and go into underserved neighborhoods where we can make a difference in nonprofits. The year of engagement. Now, I've stood in the control tower, landing planes and making room for takeoffs as our leaders took you on a journey and pushed us into corners of Dallas and radical places like the churches that are just down the street, to the mosque, to places where we have served, to having sermons here on race and racism, to bring Alicia Brooks here from the Southern Poverty Law Institute, and Rabbi Knight from the Temple, and we served in schools downtown and the food bank, as you've heard. But now it's my turn to use the sabbatical time that you have given me. I want to give back. while doing something I love, as I said to the children. So I'm setting off on this journey. And like any journey, beyond the physical and the navigational and the logistical, the most challenging part I know will be carrying on. Will be that emotional side, that there will be moments where I know that I will want to give up, like being in the ditch. And though I know, I will meet the Samaritan along the way who will encourage me on. My faith as a Unitarian Universalist says, keep moving forward. Make adventures. Find adversity and relate to them equally. Hold precious this day that you have. Do something extraordinary. Make a difference in the world. And it says, not that there are a lot of crazy people out there, but there are a lot of good people out there. I'm not naive, but my faith drives me toward a level of trust that I will find the good in those on the road. I saw this film recently called Craigslist Joe. Aaron told me about it. He's a guy that's even crazier than I am. He set off on a 30-day journey with no money, just a laptop and a toothbrush and a telephone. He used Craigslist to post his needs, and by and large, they were all met during the month. People gave him food and bicycles and rides to other states and homes to stay in. He went 31 days with no money or anything, just a willingness to meet people where they were and make relationships with them. He inspires. And I have read in the last year many stories like this, and I have asked myself, what does your faith say about humanity? And I know it says essentially, we are good, not evil. And that's important to us. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, we always think about how great the man was who took the man out of the ditch. But there's an interesting dynamic in that story that I think we rarely touch on. And it is a dynamic that drives me forward. And the key word in that parable is that the Samaritan showed mercy. He showed mercy upon that man. Kindness in the face of a power differential. You see, the Jew in the ditch, the man from Jerusalem, was the man of power. The Samaritan was the man disenfranchised, the foreigner in the land. He showed his mercy because there was a turning of the power dynamic in that moment. Like a judge making a lenient sentence, or in another way, someone who is backed into a corner and then gains the upper hand yet shows mercy. The oppressed becoming powerful show mercy. The Samaritan is the oppressed in that situation. The man in the ditch is the powerful. So the story, in a sense, at the core of this story is asking us something deep of our spiritual lives. For me, what it is saying is that from time to time we must move from that position of the powerful to the position of requiring mercy, where the social rules are reversed, like in the story. So in a way, for me, while not going into the ditch literally, I am seeking ways in which I am not the giver but the receiver, not the host but the guest, not the powerful but the vulnerable. And this is the spiritual work that we can do. We do it when we cross borders of all kinds, not just those at the state lines, but in our lives. We do it in being of service to others. We do it in finding ways to ease our positions into the humanity of who we are when we meet people equally for who they are. Mercy and vulnerability are a driver for me in my spiritual life and an inspiration in part for this journey. The parable points out in a new and radical day, Jesus is saying mercy and hospitality to the stranger among us is our task. And therefore, to make room for the possibility of God's revelation and presence among us. That old definitions of neighbors will not work, even as old definitions of justice and hospitality will not work, that we must expand the circle of God's love and free ourselves and others from the bondage of our own limits. So that is what I am testing. And I go in support of the year of engagement and service, which has asked this of us. We joke, but how hard it was for a group of people to leave this church and go across the street to the Church of Christ, because it made them vulnerable. It required that they receive hospitality, that they not be in control, the powerful, but receive mercy. And so many other ways we did that this year. And I go in honor of our work for Jericho Road, which will put you into volunteer opportunities to do just that. We are the Samaritans and the man in need, and when we hold these both in regard, we will be better for it. And that is the spiritual message today. So in conclusion, I realized today as I was unloading my bicycle off the car to come in how much I will miss you, and understand that you cannot leave while I am gone. You are in good hands with Aaron and with our summer sabbatical minister, Beth Dana. They have a great summer planned for you. Keep up the good work. Continue to make this place a place of hospitality and mercy. Do extraordinary things and be well. I love you. Amen.